Hello, and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I initially was supposed to have two people on, Bound Ashley and SemenawaPrincess. However, due to some terrible logistics on my part and not coordinating proper time zones, Bound Ashley will not be joining me today. I will coordinate in a part 2 episode with her. So today I am going to be having the other side of a conversation that I had 2 weeks ago with Mr. Tinkertrain about rope bondage. And during that conversation, there was a lot of questions that started coming up that he wasn't able to answer, not because he's not capable, but because it's another side of that life that's not from a dominance perspective or a tops perspective. And that is what's going on with the person that we're tying. So I reached out into the community and said, I need to speak to some rope bunnies. Got some really great replies. Found a couple wonderful rope bottoms. Had some great conversations already this past week, and decided, finally I got my coordination skills going, and have hooked up today to have a sit down conversation with. I'm going to mispronounce your name already because it's left my mind. SemenawaPrincess Begge. My God. All right. Well, English is sometimes my first language. So thank you for spending your morning with me, chatting away about, I'm going to assume, one of your favorite topics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'd kind of like to know what's the appeal? How did you first get started in rope? What was the appeal inside of our vast community that rope kind of, you looked at it and said, that's it, that's for me?
Um, Definitely when I first started out on FetLife, there's so many pictures always on on your feed from all these people that are doing these amazing suspensions, and it looks so cool. And but also locally, we've got a huge rope scene here in Melbourne, and it's just very popular. It's a part of the culture, and so I was just naturally drawn to that and wanted to be a part of it. I knew that it would be something I would enjoy because I used to do gymnastics and yoga when I was a lot younger, and I kind of felt like I'd be able to use that in being able to do rope as well. So I decided I would. I was dating somebody at the time, and I asked them if they'd be interested in like starting to do rope together. They weren't that interested. So I said, all right, well, I'll go out and find people who would be interested in doing that with me. And
Right.
so I decided I'd go to a rope jam. And I was at my friend's birthday party, and I was chatting with this guy there who I'd seen around a few times, and I said, oh, I was, going to the jam tomorrow, and he said, oh, I'll be there as well. And so I went to this jam, and there was only like a handful of people there. It was literally like 4 people. It was the smallest jam I've ever seen. But it was the first jam I'd ever been to, and him and I did rope that day, and then he started inviting me to classes to model for his classes, and just went from there. And we just kept doing rope every fortnight together, and then sometimes every week, and yeah, so that's how I got into the rope.
Did that evolution for you, I mean, did it just continue as far as what you were learning in with him or in classes, or did you start, like others, going out and getting books or looking stuff up online? Like how much, not that I don't want it to say like it sounds like it's consuming your life, but how much did you want it to be a part of your life?
Quite a lot actually. It became, I guess you could say, when people say, "What do you do as a hobby?" This would be what I consider my hobby. It's what I do in my spare time. I like to get tired. I like to attend classes. I like to go to munches. I like to go to discussions like I'm going to one this afternoon, all sorts of things. So, yeah, and all my friends are from the rope community pretty much, and it just becomes a part of your life, really. Or it did
Right.
for me.
I, s- um, I saw in when you first contacted me, I saw obviously your profile photo, and I saw this string. Do you intermix other styles of play when you're doing rope, or is rope your primary?
I definitely am a masochist, so I do enjoy all sorts of well, masochist leaning play. I like power dynamics and things like that, so I really enjoy being overpowered.
Okay.
So yeah, in rope, I really do enjoy a bit of impact as well. But the photo you're referring to was actually needle play. So yeah, I do enjoy all aspects of different play. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously within that photo, artistically stunning. Especially, I tend to find black and white much more empowering and emotional because you we have the contrast of the light and the dark, and it's your mind trying to interpret what you're seeing.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, so I can needle play is not being a sadist myself. Needle play is not in my range. I had a wonderful conversation with somebody a few months back who does this in South Africa, and describing similar things. And I've seen photography with needlepoint and wings and people, and it's stunning, and it's invoking as well. And I can't imagine the emotional process one goes through because you're not talking. There's not just a couple of needles in that particular photo. There's looks like to be well over 100.
Mm. Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I think it was 110 or something like that. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
good. It was a journey. It was really cool.
yeah. It's something definitely different. I think inside of our world, we as we start going down the proverbial rabbit hole of the community, we start opening our, as we figure out what our path is, we start opening ourselves up to more things that
Mm.
may be of interest and definitely shy away from the things that aren't of interest. Um, was the person you first started your rope with the person you ended up modeling for and doing some classes with? Is that a person you continued with today, or is that kind of have
Oh,
you evolved
absolutely.
on?
It's really interesting how that relationship developed, actually. I would consider him my partner now. So, like we're in a romantic relationship that's that came about because of rope. So yeah, yeah, it's yeah. And I think that can often happen with rope too. Because you're in these spaces where it's quite intimate. It can be very you're sharing this space together, and there's a lot of trust that goes into that too from both sides. So when you're doing it regularly and you connect with each other outside of rope too, it's sort of inevitable that that sort of relationship can develop, I think, for a lot of people. So mm.
It's something, there's something there you mentioned, and I want to, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm doing a therapy session now. um, but there's something that you mentioned there. You're talking about intimacy, and
Mm.
a lot of people hear intimacy, they're going to flip right away and they're going to go, oh, okay, sex. Well, intimacy isn't sex. Intimacy is about that deep connection that we're starting to feel, those intimate feelings inside of us that both parties are feeling when we're kind of on the same wavelength. How does that play out, or how did that play out for you more so when you first started feeling this with him?
Oh, hmm. I think it was quite. I think it's quite early in the piece. Maybe it's not as much about rope generally. I mean, it's not going to happen with everybody, but
Sure.
for him particularly, we just have a very good connection right from the get go. So, um, I think it was quite early on, in I would say we'd only been tying together like pretty much straight away. I would say so.
Kind of a rope at first sight type of thing, right?
Yeah, quite. Yeah, took me by surprise. I would say, yeah, it'd been maybe a month in, and I was like, oh, hold on, what's going
Yep,
on here? I
kind
got
of
a
kind of
crush on
like
this
you here
guy.
a little bit. Yeah, kind of sweet on you. I mean, it's interesting, and I'm asking this question. Actually, wasn't even one of the ones I asked you, but it just kind of brought me to that because that's the point of all of our different connections throughout this community. What's bringing us all together? When I had the conversation a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Tinkertrain's response was similar. With some of his partners, it's just straightforward tying and the process, and with
Mm,
others, it's a bit more primal or intimate or caring, and the connections we have are obviously going to be different with each person. Um, so, but it's interesting because you'd mentioned that, and I'm like, oh, okay, you went. There was an emotional side component first. Has that deepened both of your love for rope together because you have more of an intimate connection now and a romantic connection?
That is such an interesting question, and I'm really glad you asked it actually, because it's something I've thought about a lot and haven't ever said it out loud. I personally, from my point of view, I mean, he might have a different point of view, but for me personally, I feel like when we first started out doing rope, he would only do floor rope, and I'm not sure whether it might have been a confidence thing that he hadn't like he'd been doing it for 6 years, but had not got to a point where he was like confident, I suppose, to suspend. But I think because him and I like started doing regular classes together and we were doing rope together so regularly, um, his skill levels just sort of like his confidence met his skill levels and he started to push himself into doing suspensions. And then, so his skills, like I've watched him in the last year and a bit that we've been seeing each other. He's personally, I think, one of the best riggers in town now, and maybe I've got a biased opinion, but I've just watched his rope skills just exceed, like go up and up and up all the time. They don't stop. And he puts so much, not just with me, like he goes and puts so many hours into it
Right.
every week with lots of other people too. But also for me though, like because I do tie with him like every week, I definitely would credit my skills as a rope bottom because of the time that we've put in it together. So yeah, I think we've both excelled like that way. Yeah, in this partnership.
Well,
So
what you're explaining here is probably something that I harp on. I think about 95% of the time you can catch the word in my writing, and I'm talking about effort. And that's
mm,
exactly what you're talking about, is putting this, you have passion. So you passion and drive and love for what you're doing inside of our community. And then you and him both combined, separately, individually, are going on and putting in all this effort to enhance your skills, to push yourselves to those next levels of what you're doing. And it's quite, it's not, I don't want to say it's rare within the community, but in a place like FetLife, which to me is not the greatest representation, or even fetish.com or a couple of other social media places. Not that I'm dogging those places, but I think it's the people that come there, they're apt for what they believe the lifestyle is more, I would say, is congruently runs with the view of 50 Shades of Stupid. And that's the unfortunate part. It's,
yeah.
I've met wonderful people from all over, from Australia, Singapore, the United States. Where when you sit down and I start having conversations with people, you can hear this passion. It's the same passion I'm hearing in your voice. And then
Mm,
that passion equates into the effort of how much drive they're willing to do. And
yeah.
it's really, that's impressive to me, especially for someone being in for so long that, I don't mentor anymore because well, I'm busy. That's one. But two, I don't see the effort from anybody who wants to be mentored. So,
Mm.
um, and do you two, speaking of that, do you two both hold mentors, or is it just more of a class type situation that you go to and there's somebody who's teaching you?
Personally, for me, um, I go to classes when I can. Not so much these days, but I don't have any mentors, so to speak. My partner, he has other like people that he goes to classes with. Um, I don't know if he's got a mentor, really, to be honest. But yeah, you look up to people in the community, and you know the ones that are respectful and that you could listen to their opinion on things for sure. Yeah.
Well, and then you kind of get to the point where I suppose your confidence between you and this partner of yours or another partner, you can find yourself in the point where you're starting to demonstrate more and now you're no longer the one sitting and learning, you're the one sharing your knowledge.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess so. I mean, I still feel a little bit of imposter syndrome with that because I still feel like I'm quite new. I've only been doing this since April last year. And so that's quite new in the big scheme of things. So, but I certainly think that I've put in enough hours and enough ties to be able to give an opinion and, safety points and things like that. So if somebody were to ask me for advice, I would certainly be happy to give it. Yeah.
And I think that's important because we all need, especially when we're new, we're going to have a lot of questions. Everybody has questions.
Mm,
And I think it's important if we can have people we can turn to who at least have some experience and are constantly working or honing their craft, that we can go, hey, I'm sorry, I know you're busy. Do you mind if I ask you a question? And I think it's important for
mm,
us to contribute back to the community. I think that's what the sense of community is in the first place, that it's a give and
100%. Yeah.
take.
Yeah.
Um, what does it look like? Do you guys, do you, with any of your partners, or even if you self tie, do
Mm.
you go through any type of a ritual before that you find is quite empowering for yourself?
Sort of the way that we would start a rope scene, um, with me and my partner, would be that they are getting the ring set up and the beaners and the rope laid out and all that sort of thing. I would normally be doing my stretches and
Yep.
just
That's the
starting
first
to
2 hours,
zone.
by the way, for those who don't know, maybe three. By then, I've done my impact scene. I've already come in my aftercare and probably going home. Well, they're still fucking around with rope. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I've heard that that's the general, yeah,
Yep.
people feel that we take a time. But anyway, so yeah, no, doing my stretches and then normally we'd stop, standing, take a deep breath, look at each other, have a kiss and a hug, and then start our scene. So that's sort of how we begin normally.
Do
Mm.
you do you have any prerequisites before you get into a rope scene? Things that, my bottle of water, I've got to be here, and here's my chocolate bar, or my bag of potato chips, or whatever, or you know, um, you've checked the rope, I've checked the rope, you're checking it again, where there's a triple check, whatever. Do you have anything like that before you get into a scene?
I think I'm pretty low maintenance actually. If it's someone I haven't tied with often, or if it's the first time I've tied with somebody, I would always double check they've got their shears because I don't need to check that with my partner. I trust 100% they've always got them. So, but with someone I don't know, I would make sure that they've got their shears nearby, and just making sure, doing the risk profile checks and negotiations before we start and all that sort of thing. So, but no prerequisites, no particular props or anything I need. No.
So for those that may not understand, I mean, even though not my world, I get why. When you're talking about shears, can you elaborate why you would want to have a pair handy?
Oh, 100%. That's one of the most important things is to make sure that the rope needs to be cut. You've got a reliable tool that you're going to be able to cut that rope with. So if something's going wrong, you need to be able to get out of that.
So more for mitigating safety, and if something is like an oh shit moment,
Yeah,
and we need
absolutely
that,
safety.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, and I think, while I'm pretty sure most people are going to understand what it's for, to kind of emphasize that point, because
Mm,
if you're thinking about being suspended and tied, I think most people don't really understand. Obviously, there's anatomy involved, pinching of nerves, uh, hitting an artery, tying near an artery, and all of that process. Did
yeah.
did this Has this world for you made your awareness of your own anatomy grow?
Oh, it has. Yeah, it really has. Before I even began doing rope, I wasn't aware of potential nerve damage and things like that. Um, it was lucky that when I first started going to rope jams and things like that, that I met somebody who was really responsible to include that in the negotiation talk before starting to do rope. Like, are you aware of of nerve damage, and do you know about these things? And I kind of feel a lot of rope bottoms are not aware of that when they start to get out into the community, and that responsibility can sometimes fall on the top to make sure that they are asking those questions of the rope bottom before they begin playing with someone, I feel.
Right.
It's not to say that it's their responsibility 100%, but it's just, I think, really important for them to be like, well, hey, do you know about this? Okay, well, here's a quick rundown. For further information, I feel like maybe, encouraging bottoms to attend classes and things like that too. It's not the top's responsibility, but it's certainly important for them to try and make sure that bottoms are aware of it as well.
Sure. I think, I mean, you bring in a point, and it's kind of something that I want to bring in the counterpoint to that. It's something that
Mm,
I argue within the lifestyle. If we place too much responsibility on anyone, and I'll say it's
mm,
on either side of the slash, or for
yeah.
those that are just whatever position they choose to be,
Mm,
um, if we place it too much on one person and we're expecting, I tend to call it the baby bird syndrome, where we need to be mouth fed every bit of
mm,
information and we're not learning anything independently.
yeah.
It's kind of like the process I went through when I used to train submissives long ago. Here is some information. I'll check in with you during the week. This is what I want you to go and learn about. And it needs to be
Mm,
independent. It can't just be from me, because then it's one sided and there's no
yeah.
growth.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely, somebody's going to give me the responsibility and um, autonomy over them, that it is important
Mm,
that I'm checking with them and realize what's going on. But
yeah.
I think for me too, we all got to be at a similar level. Is that something? Have you ever done a tie with somebody who wasn't at your skill level?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a friend who had done a few classes but felt they were nowhere near, you know, um, any level to be able to play with somebody.
Right.
And I encouraged her. I was like, no, no, come on, just show me what you got. Just let's just muck around. Just show me. And so we did, and it was just really basic, of course, and but it was nice. I enjoyed it. It was lovely, and I gave her really good encouragement, and hopefully she took that away and was able to feel a bit more confident to do another scene with someone else another time. So yeah, I definitely will play with people who I'm not going to do suspensions with somebody that I'm not confident in. No
Right.
way. But with basic rope where there's a minimal risk. Of course, there's always a risk, but it's not going to be death. So, yeah, that's fine.
At least we hope it's not going to be. I mean, the
Well,
reality with
yeah,
anything we do, just because when we
that is
never
true.
know, yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't
Mm,
want to take it lightheartedly. I know even after 25 years, I still go and attend stuff because I'm still learning. I'll learn from anybody that's got something new to show me. And whether
mm,
I find it interesting or not, that's a different story. But if it
yeah,
captures my attention, I'm definitely going to be, oh my God, how did you do this? Where did you learn? How many things did you read or practice on, and kind of go from
yeah,
there. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, what other, when you're doing ties and whatnot, do you incorporate, as through even through this, if you get into the suspension or just the floor work, do you start incorporating a lot of impact scenes, or do you primarily just focus on the rope and the tie that takes 29 hours to do?
Oh, normally it's just the focus of the 29 hours of rope.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, impact can be thrown in there sometimes too. That's always fun. Might be a bite here or there, or a bit of a smack on the butt, or whatever. It's not the main thing normally. It's just sort of a little side, a bit of garnish, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah. Do you, before you're going to enter, obviously, with a couple certain partners, you have a lot more experience and a lot more comfortability with, do you find you need to, or do you have a ritual or something you do to get yourself psychologically ready before you enter the scene?
Yeah, I do start to go inward a little bit while waiting for the top to get their things ready. I'm standing there stretching, as I mentioned before, but while I'm doing that, I'm starting to block out what's happening around me, and I'm just going, sort of starting almost a meditation in a way.
Okay.
And I'm focusing on my breath, and I'm just like starting to get into a space at that point. Yeah, it's just really just going inward.
What is that for some people that for them that might even be, they start to feel it, but I don't want, so they can understand how normal that might look. What does that look like for you when that starts to happen to you?
I think people will notice me no longer making any eye contact with anybody. Normally looking down, not looking around, up, or anything else, just sort of in a downward um, eye line. And they'll just be seeing me rolling my shoulders and like just sort of starting to sway a little bit and wriggle slowly, just feeling into my body. So it's all very much, I'm not looking around me anymore. The room's not there. It's just me on the mat and waiting for my partner to be ready. So,
Do you find like a sense of calm starts rushing over you?
yeah,
Is there anxiety?
nope, nope. It's a really still feeling. It's kind of relaxing in a way. It's the best way I could describe it or compare it to is sort of like meditation, really. It's kind of, yeah, that's probably the closest thing I'd be able to
No,
relate
that I
it
mean
to.
that definitely makes a lot of sense. I know, there was a question that I put out to the both of you when I started thinking about this topic, and so it's one that I asked Mr. Tinkertrain a couple weeks back about, and this is kind of what then led me to where we are today. Uh, and that's, is there a catharsis for you when you're being bound, a release? Do you
Hmm.
find yourself, or maybe a better way to really describe this is, do you find you're more free when you're constrained, as odd as that may sound?
Nope, it's completely spot on. I've described it that way myself many times. Um, yeah, it creates a stillness. So it is cathartic. It is a release. It's because when life is so busy all the time, and there's so much going on, and your mind doesn't stop. For me personally, I feel like I'm constantly, there's chitter chatter in my mind all the time. But when I get into rope and I'm in the rope space, it's quiet. All I'm thinking about is the exact moment that I'm in, the exact, it's all just, it's very mindful. It's completely immersive, and nothing else exists in that time. So it just makes my mind go still. Yeah. So yeah, I would say that.
What do you find, once the tie is over, or now you're lifted and suspended, or you're fully 18 and a half hours later, you're finally done tying and you're on the floor. What at that point do you start feeling? What is running, if anything is running through your mind? Would you describe it as you're slipping into that subspace, or does something more emotionally start to transform inside of you? I'm
I
very
would say
kind of,
that's a
that's the question that I couldn't, obviously I can't get a top to answer.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so after having been in that real state of stillness where normally the rope I do is very, very hard, hard play, I suppose, and um, quite painful for some people. Painful for me, but it's good for me. So yeah, you go through that entire experience of being completely immersed and pushed to your limits that you feel I couldn't possibly hold in this rope for much longer. And then you get released down onto the ground, and it's complete relief. It's one of the best feelings. I don't know what feels better, being up in the rope or coming down off the rope. So it's I kind of feel like the release is best though, coming down, and it's complete. I say almost euphoria. It's the best feeling. I love it. I'm ecstatic when I come out of the rope, when I touch the ground again.
Are you? Are you cognizant when you're coming out, or are you floating?
Floating, still floating, but it's still like you're starting to come out of that and you're feeling so grateful to touch the ground again. And then the ropes are slowly coming off. And so after the initial touchdown, which is like, oh, thank God I'm on the ground, I feel so good. And then it's incremental release, relief as the rope slowly unbounds off the, and you're always in an awkward position. It's never
Sure.
comfortable.
Right.
So being released from that slowly is in itself its own little journey, and it's really, yeah, it's cool.
So that's interesting, which that'll kind of lead me to my next question. What then do you have? Because not everybody, for those who, I know this could be a shock to everybody. Not everybody is into aftercare. It's a
Mm.
negotiated thing for those of you who are not, who don't have a lot of experience. Aftercare is not a given because not everybody wants it or not everybody does it. But
Mm.
yeah, it's true. It's as much as a
Yeah.
surprise. There was a submissive I met a few years back, and while she identified as a submissive, the one thing that she didn't ever want was aftercare. She's like, I kind of want to come in, do my scene. Part of her negotiations, those were her limits. At least
Oh,
for
okay.
about the first 6 months. I'm like, okay, cool, fair enough.
Mm.
You may not want it, but even me coming down, I may need it. And she's like, no, I'm fine with that. I don't want it. Okay, but don't want to segue too much. So what does, if at any point, what's aftercare look for, like for you after a rope scene?
Yeah, a comfy couch. And sitting and chatting. That's it. I don't need much more. I doesn't matter if I've had an impact scene or if I've done a hardcore rope scene or if it's been just a really sensual, easygoing, playful floor rope. Um, I just like to sit down with that person that I've shared that experience with. We don't need to hug. I'm not really big on affection, to be honest, especially if it's not someone I don't know well.
Right.
Um, and just sit on the couch chatting and debriefing. If that, we don't even need to talk about the scene. We can just talk about everything else. Have a cup of tea, maybe, depending where we are. So, but yeah, the probably a biggest prerequisite you did ask me earlier, and I probably neglected to say a comfy couch, somewhere comfy to sit afterwards is pretty important.
I can imagine. I mean, is it you, or if is it you or your partner at the time, or maybe even you're like, no? Are you working like massaging out your muscles at this point while you're sitting there? Because obviously,
No.
being bound in these uncomfortably, bendy positions and
Mm,
being held like that, that's got to be stressful. I mean, it's gonna be stressful on the joints no matter what.
mm. Yeah, I might maybe do a few shoulder rotations and try and get them feeling good again. But it doesn't really need too much, to be honest. They just happens on its own.
Interesting.
Hmm.
And I know, well, we had talked about this, but are you, do you have a lot of, are you poly, not poly, monogamous, if you don't mind
Yes,
me
I'm
asking?
Polly.
Poly.
Yep, Polly.
So do all of your connections, if they are all, because obviously I don't know, so we're going to get a little personal here. If they are all tops, are they all rope tops with you, or are they each individually something different? And if they are all in the rope world, is there things you do with them that's individual, or do you kind of follow a similar pattern?
Well, I'm actually not seeing anybody outside of my partner at the moment, but
Ah,
the
so you're
people that
lying and
I
you're monogamous. Okay,
no,
so
I'm Polly, but I'm only one partner currently. But um,
liar.
no, but there are other connections that I have, and what I've found is that every connection that I develop is normally related with rope. Ever since I've started in the community, so
Right.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
How does? But do you find that those connections? Are they formulaic from the first connection that you currently have, or your primary that you currently have? Do they follow a similar pattern, or they've all gone down their own path?
Well, I mean, I connect with these people through rope, yeah, and so then we start catching up outside of rope, um, and the core of it is because we have that common interest. So I would say, I suppose it follows the same path. Yeah. I kind of think it might be difficult to have a partner that's not in the rope community just because it's, I mean, I never say never, but it would just seem sort of unbalanced in a way.
Oh, so you mean you couldn't just date, or have a partner who was, say, I don't know, a sadist?
Oh,
No,
that's not true. No, you're
no,
right. I
yeah.
definitely, no, I definitely could.
The
But
sadist who doesn't like rope. Not that a sadist who despises rope, but just a sadist in general, like who likes impact scenes and electrocutions and water and stuff like that, or
no, I
burials.
love those people. Those
Okay.
people are awesome. So yeah, I lie.
Yeah, because we do exist. There are
Yeah, I know.
those sadists who just don't like rope. No, I mean it's interesting because when I learned, I learned a lot a couple weeks back. Did you, with your journey thus far into rope, have the more you've dove into the subject, are you now immersing yourself as far as like history and like its origins, or does that not hold much for you in the relevance of rope?
You pick it up as you go along. I haven't actually gone and read books about it. You
Oh
Google
no.
things. Yeah, I mean, you Google things and you learn about it and you hear about it in classes and stuff like that. And the people that I hang out with are those types of people who get into the history and all that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say I've just gone and read a history book on it. No.
Well, I mean, or yeah, even learning from different, I guess, quasi masters or whatever the case may be, or experts in the field. I mean,
Mm,
you know, obviously in our world, there's not a lot of nothing really holds a lot of relevance or fact. It's not objective. It's all subjective. Suffice it to
mm,
say, and to blow the minds of everybody who's going to be listening to this, BDSM is completely subjective. We're making this up as we go along. We have
yeah.
experiences in the past to draw from, but even
Mm,
rope suspension, that's been drawn from rituals and cultures that have existed for thousands of years before us. So it's not like we're doing anything new.
mm,
We're just taking it into a more of an erotic, cathartic form for ourselves, and evolving it. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I was just kind of curious how far that goes for you. Are there? I know there's different parts to rope
mm.
for you. Do you get into like the Kinembaku? I think it is pronounced. I apologize for mispronouncing that part of it. Or is that, how does that play for you?
Um, I definitely find I'm a little bit challenged in culture and Japanese language and things like that. So, um, yeah, I'm a bit ignorant. It, like, just doesn't stick, to be honest. But in saying that, if I was to say that the rope that I do, it is with people who practice shibari in Kimbaku, and they're not limited to one style. They will try all the different styles. So there are certain communities which own, or certain schools or classes which only practice one particular style. But the people that I tie with, they're not limited to one style. They do all the different styles, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. Um. Yeah. I guess again, we're all just attracted to um what drives us inside of the particular kink or the fetish that we are attracted to.
Mm,
What is something that you'd like to, if we start looking towards, if you start looking at your future, when I always talk to people about in therapy is, one thing is, how does your future look for you? What's your, 30, 60, 90, 1 year, 5 year plan? Where do you
mm,
see that for yourself as far as rope goes?
mm. I definitely want to continue doing as much rope bottoming as what I do, and I would like to, once I feel more as though I have earned the right to be able to help like newer people. I would like to become a rope bottom educator or a facilitator in some way to, do things that are helping with rope bottom education. Um, that definitely would be something that I would get a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction from. But also, I do want to start learning how to tie as well. And it just takes a lot of time and dedication. So it might
It
not be
takes
something I'll do for
time.
a little while.
It takes time to tie rope. No,
Shocking, right?
shocking. I thought we did that stuff in like 5 minutes. What
Yeah.
as much as I give you all in in your community a hard time, I will be the first to admit I have seen some things that are exceptionally beautiful.
Mm,
With the multiple colors of the rope and then the plays against the skin and then however they do the lighting, there is an artistic and intrinsic value to it,
mm,
and I get that. I think for me, I'm just impatient. So your average, if we're going to be honest here for a minute, if you're going to get into the difference between a suspension and floor work, could you give me an idea of time between
oh,
the difference? Just to kind of
well,
maybe emphasize the point that I believe that this takes forever to do.
I guess there is no comparison really because it's what you're putting into it. A floor rope, you may only need one rope. You could do a floor scene with just one piece of rope, and it's just how you're moving that rope around that other person. And you can do that for as long as you want. You can take as long as you want with that. But of course, if you're doing more Semenawa with lots of different tricky harnesses and things like that, you might need quite a lot of rope and a lot of time to, and it's still going to be the same time as you would use with just one rope. But and then of course, if you're suspending, it's the exact same thing. It's not time dependent. It's just what you're doing with it, really. You could do a harness in 2 minutes. Like I went to a workshop the other week and they have this really quick harness that you could have on in like 20 seconds and you could have somebody up in the air in that such a short space of time. You know what I mean? So there's no time comparison. It's really what you're doing.
Do you think that the majority or people that are reluctant to get into rope, I'll even say myself, is because we view it as such a time, constraining
Mm.
activity or fetish to get into?
I would agree that perhaps it's overcomplicated sometimes. You can learn the safety basics for rope and a couple of basic ties, and you can still have an amazing scene. You don't need to be doing tricky harnesses that are requiring you to do all this complex stuff. I mean, if you want to, absolutely do the education and learn how to do that. But if you are not interested in getting the complicated stuff, you can go to classes and just go to a beginner's level, learn the safety, learn your basic stuff, and still be very adept at creating an amazing rope scene.
Do you, depending on where you're at, because I've seen, of course, I've seen, like you, I've seen different imagery. Um, I've, seen videos of rope. I've gone to God knows enough discussions about rope. But um, are most of the times, because I know it's even with, I'm thinking about one client that started their rope journey early, um, but they didn't feel comfortable being completely nude. Or is the majority of what you do completely clothed? Or are there intimate times with your partner when you're alone and you're maybe doing a private scene together that you're not? Or is it a standard requirement?
Being nude is absolutely not important. You can do it fully clothed with a beautiful long dress if you really want to. It's going to give the rigger the shits because they're going to have to get around the dress. But you can wear leggings and a long sleeve shirt. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. But yeah, to answer your question, I used to only wear clothes when I would do rope. But I've become much more relaxed and comfortable in myself now, and I'm quite happy to go without a top. But I always like to wear undies. That's it. That's just where my cutoff point is. But of course, if I was at home with my partner, then anything goes because as long as I've got my own rope. I don't want to use rope that's been used on other people if I'm not wearing undies. Mm.
Well, I mean, interesting. I think it's another, thing that, well, not necessarily a misconception, but even if somebody doesn't know what's an expectation to be
Mm.
out there when they're with the top or they're even unsure what they may want to do.
Mm.
Um,
Just put your clothes on if you don't want to
yeah,
be
because
naked.
I don't know how much, like you brought up the point of how much it might interfere with tying or the workarounds. But I mean, I can again, there's a lot of, do you only do, because I've seen pictures of people going out into, doing, well, I've been a part of scenes where friends of mine have done ties in nature. Is
Mm.
is that something that you've ever done or wanted to
Mm.
do?
Yeah. I would like to get into the bush and do something more like bush based, but we do go on urbex adventures, so out into deserted spaces, deserted buildings, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, getting out into nature is not something I've done that much of that I can think of, but definitely want to do more of. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I I guess for each, for each aspect, what, it's always going to have a different draw, and I guess you're always going to want to start pushing yourselves, I suppose, to the, to the next level
Mm.
of your skill. Is there anything yet you have not done in rope that you want to do in rope?
Yeah, actually, I want to do a snow tie. That's what I'd really like. There's been a few times where we've done rope and it's been freezing cold, um, and it just adds a different element to suffering in rope. And so I think getting tied in the snow would be like the pinnacle for me in suffer rope. So that's definitely something I want to do.
I mean, that's interesting because that was something that Mr. Tinkertrain brought up a couple weeks back when he, for his journey, he had found a rope bondage book. I can't remember where he was out on vacation, and he came across this, and this was, this rope tie master out of Japan for him, which is his big draw. And it was
Mm,
obviously some of the earliest stuff that, by today's standards for people on FET would be, they'd be out with pitchforks and torches wanting to burn this man down. But it was tying a, rope person or a rope bunny, a rope bottom, rope model, whatever, wherever you
mm,
identify in that range, and then
mm.
chucking the girl out into the snow.
Yeah.
And the, the photos are still out there. And
Mm,
after he told me about it, I went to look because I was just kind of curious. And it's powerful and it's immersive because it's just the sadistic side appeals to me. But
mm,
I can see the impact because there's so much, you're adding you're adding elemental play to it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that takes, every time we're evolving our craft and we're introducing something new into our styles of play, that really changes and pushes our own limits into something new.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
there anything in rope you won't do? Because
Oh,
I think it's
that's
good to also talk about limitations from a bottom's perspective.
yeah, it's a good question. I haven't yet found something that I wouldn't do. It's not to say that there isn't something out there, but
Sure.
yeah, I'm sure there might be something one day that I'm like, no, I won't do that. But
So, like,
um,
if you were suspended and we were to hire a bunch of carnies with tomatoes and throw them at your face while you're being gagged, you'd be okay with that?
well, that might be one of the things that I discover that I don't want to
Don't
do.
like, really? Okay. Well, I mean, you're a
It's
masochist,
something I
and
hadn't
we're
thought
just
of before, but
I'm pushing the limits here of the discussion. So, sadists, we are a different mind frame
mm,
altogether. So, nothing
yeah,
against carnies, love them. You guys are great. So it's not,
yeah. I
I'm
just don't like
ready.
tomatoes.
No, okay. Well, we can get pies and bananas or pineapple or carrots or grapes. There's all sorts of fruits and veg that could be chucked. Humra, for those who
Mm.
don't. Yep. Sweet potato, for those who don't know.
No, I'll think about it.
Yep. So, but I mean, in all seriousness, though, are there things you're like, nah, that's a no for me that I won't do?
I saw something the other day where they had, and mind you, this is an extremely, very, very extreme type of tie. It's not something that many people would normally do, but it's definitely something I would not do. I can say straight up.
Okay.
It's just hanging by wrists and ankles, in and like belly down with your arms and
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
legs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
yeah. Just that's just. I feel it would just be too much strain. I just know I wouldn't do that. Mm.
No, I mean, fair enough. Is there?
Mm.
Do you have limitations with your partners? If they get into doing some I don't know if you do involve degradation in your scenes. Are there any limits for you for that?
With the right people, degradation is something that I am open to, or I enjoy. It's not something for anyone. Not anyone can do it. Some people need to know how to do it. Humiliation, absolutely not. Not into humiliation, but degradation is definitely with the right people. Yeah,
Is there an emotional release for you when you go through that while being bound?
it's a very sexual space for me.
Okay.
Degradation,
No,
so
fair enough.
objectification and that sort of thing. So I am not open to that with just anyone. It's yeah.
No, I don't think most. I think don't think most are. Because that gets
Mm,
to. I think that has to take us to a different level of
mm,
intimacy,
yeah,
erotic. Our erotic connections, our sexuality. That we, all these things, got to kind of coexist with that right person.
yeah. It's a
Um,
power thing as well. It's a power exchange.
mhm.
So I don't just let anybody take that power. So yeah, it's definitely something that has to be in a very trusted relationship. Mm,
No, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and
mm,
I would say that we're not. You can't do a lot of things with. You can't do the same things with one partner you're going to do with somebody else because it's not going to work. Everybody's going to react and act.
mm,
Um, it's all going to be completely individual. So
mm,
yeah,
hmm.
uh, I mean, no, interesting enough. Is there anything you feel that was probably one of the more important aspects that you really wanted to kind of elaborate on that you feel that maybe I kind of missed out on touching base on?
Um, no, I think you've done a pretty good job covering all those questions. Yeah, it was some really thought-provoking stuff, actually. Hmm.
Well, I mean, I think it's important because as I talked to you about earlier, for the community to start understanding where we are coming from. What's the appeal for me talking to you being not that I have anything against younger people. When I typically meet people in the TNG range, I don't have a big
Mm,
favorable opinion of them, but that are working on your craft, that are constantly evolving your hobby, that you are constantly, working on your knots, or you're creating a new flogger, or you're learning how to handle it, or you're reading a book on anatomy. You're really putting effort into the community, and what you are taking away from it, you're starting to give back because you're
mm,
really, when I asked you what you want to do for the future, you really, it's although it may not be 100% concrete, you have a plan, you have a path. I'd love to start, share what I know with others. And
yeah.
that's what I said to you earlier. That's how we keep a community moving forward.
Mm,
Unfortunately, with a lot of people on social media, Twitter, FetLife, Facebook, whatever, wherever people are finding a lot of information or whatever they're finding, it's more about being self-centered. When I see
mm,
this, it's it's either some sort of victimhood, or this is how you can benefit, or pay me $39.95 and I'll get you to the next level of where we are. And there's 50 levels to go. So I don't
yeah.
really see it as beneficial. And I see a lot of, have you found in your community the people who are experts in their field are as prevalent on social media, or have they withdrawn from a lot of social media to kind of focus? And even some of my community that have gone back underground and they're like, no, you all are on your own.
Oh, it's interesting you say that. Yeah, I do find the educators in the community. I think it comes down to their social media presence being perhaps they've got private pages,
Right.
because they have a public relations that they need to maintain, because if they post something that they would post for just friends, and it's not received well by someone in the community,
Sure.
it can have an impact on their reputation. So
Sure.
perhaps that's why they are less prevalent on social media.
Yeah.
But they definitely are very quiet on their pages, from what I follow anyway.
Yeah. And what you're hinting at, I'll say it even though you won't. What you're really hinting at is what we talk about being offended. Somebody's offended because, whatever. And then
Mm,
cancel culture comes out, which is interesting
yeah.
enough. I'm going to be talking about cancel culture in the future in regards to our community, because we get a lot of people who I have friends of mine, really good people I know, a wonderful sadist I know out of Canada,
Mm,
and I've
yeah.
known them for a couple of years. I follow them, and they kind of faced outrage because there was a scene they wanted to do, and they wanted it to go, hey, community, we're doing this, we're sharing with you, and it was the feedback that kind of that and a couple of others just kind of like, all right, screw this, we're shying away from you now. But that's
Yeah.
the whole point why we were drawn to them. I talked about the other day about gatekeeping and why it's actually necessary. Because in the beginning, the reason why we all came to this community for one reason or another is because somebody had this information, these rules, these protocols that we all wanted to be a part of. And then we get inside of this and we expect everybody to change for us. Well, the world doesn't revolve around people's emotions. It
Mm,
revolves around a society and how we all intermix together. But yeah, I tend to find that a lot of people are tailoring down or tapering down their responses on social media now because they don't
yeah.
want to. Me, I don't care. I don't run from cancel culture. I thrive because of it. If they don't like me,
Yeah.
then that's fine. But you're not going to drive me off of anywhere. I'm not scared of a bunch of keyboard commandos. But that's the
Mm,
unfortunate part, because when we're all building businesses, um,
yeah.
we're worried about our outward appearance. You get to where you get to a certain point in life and you're like, well, screw it. If I'm being quite honest, I
Mm,
just say screw it. I don't really care, because you're
yeah.
not going to do anything to me. I'm not out
Mm,
harming people. And I think that's the other thing that people don't understand is, you may get into a scene where you're doing suspension with, you might decide, hey, we're going to involve some heavy impact tonight. Great. I'm really looking forward to it. And then you're sharing these photos and you may set them to private, and let's just say there's blood. Well, this starts offending people, and
mm-hmm.
they want to cancel you from being a demonstrator anymore, and call your partner toxic and unsafe, and they start these large campaigns because they're more interested in the drive of a cause that they don't really fully even understand, instead of being part of the community. And to me, those
Yeah.
are the people that don't even deserve to be inside of the community in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with saying that. It doesn't make me
Mm,
elitist, and it doesn't, and I'd rather be a gatekeeper than anything else, because at least we're passing on the information that's correct. And there's a lot of people around
yeah.
the world I respect. Um, Meeting you and learning about how much you and your partner are really that it's inspiring, to be honest with you. Not just because I'm like looking down on you or think I'm great because, oh, great, you're young, so you're learning. I think it is important to kind of emphasize um, how much effort you're putting in, how much
Mm,
it means to you, the connection and emotional connection you get from it, and how
yeah.
much you want to keep doing it. It
Mm,
is that passion that the people I've spoken to, the people I've had on, that's you can hear that in their voice, and that's for me is my drive, because
yeah.
I want to bring that back out and give everybody that opportunity to talk about it,
Yeah.
because for me
Yep.
that's what's important. And um do you find any backlash against anything you've ever done or
Um,
posted, or has it always been quite positive, hopefully?
I don't think I'm that well known to be able to get bad backlash. There was some feedback I had on a post on my rope bottom profile, which I sent to you to have a look
Right.
at, where I had included a weight and height, um,
Oh, you mean
and
preferences?
as in body height and weight,
Sure, you mean
like for me, like,
preferences. Sure,
oh
preferences.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, like my stats basically, and
Oh, you
it,
put
it
in your
was
stats. Okay.
yeah, yeah, my stats, and so it was irrelevant. And I saw someone post something, whether it was unrelated to my post or not, I'm not sure, but they said, it doesn't matter what size or height you are, or rope bottoms, anyone can be a rope bottom, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, it's a good point. So I took that on board, and I'm like, yeah, that was totally irrelevant. So I removed that. That would probably be the only thing.
Sure. I mean, if it's a learning curve for you and it's worth
Mm,
the evolution, I understand.
yeah,
But if it's a part of who you are, I would always tell you never change it for somebody else, because then you're gonna constantly keep changing for other people, and one day you're gonna wake up and not know who you are.
yeah, but yeah, I saw the point. It's like it's kind of irrelevant. Weight and height doesn't really impact on rope.
I
So,
do. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand.
mm,
As much as rope takes time, regardless of the body shape, all it is just a time process and understanding things, and then
mm,
working together, and then anybody can be involved. That's what I generally love about the community as a whole. Not because I have a dislike of rope, but the fact that we can all get involved in different scenes, regardless of who we are, and go through the process. Will the process take maybe a little bit more time or less time for somebody?
mm,
Sure, absolutely.
yeah,
But that shouldn't be restrictive on anything else.
mm,
Well, look, I appreciate your time today. Pardon me, something in my damn throat. Weather
it's okay.
today. But I appreciate you sitting down with me today, and at least the first part of this, because unfortunately I couldn't get Ashley on today, but I'll follow up with her and I'll
Mm,
do a two-parter on this. I think it was
yeah,
really important though to start getting and understanding some of the points from the opposite side of the rigger, to the
mm,
riggy, or to the bottom, or to the bunny, or to the model, or to whatever other terminology we will inevitably keep creating for all of the
mm,
things that we do, as
yeah,
language evolves. Um, do you do you have any final points that you may want to kind of share with
yeah.
everybody? Please.
Absolutely. I do want to just make it clear that I think for a lot of new rope bottoms, they look at rope and they see all these fantastical suspensions and weird positions and like people with their feet on their head. And it doesn't have to be that way though. A rope bottom, you don't have to be a circus performer to be able to do rope and to be a rope bottom. You can do it very simply. You don't need a fancy partner who's really, really skilled. As long as they're doing things safely and they've done classes to know safety,
Right.
you can just do it at home and keep it simple. You
I can
don't,
already hear people going, "Oh my God, she's telling people to practice with anyone." I know. I can. I'm a good judge of character, and that's
mm-hmm.
fine. I understand what you're saying, and I think it is
Yeah.
valuable, because we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, well,
Novices have to begin somewhere.
but you don't have to end somewhere either.
No.
There's no point that you have to reach. You can just keep it just as floor rope. You never have to suspend. You never have to get into a weird position. You can always just do gentle rope. You don't need to be a masochist. There's no particular thing you have to do to be a rope bottom. And I just want new people to know that so that they don't aspire to unrealistic things, which then might put them off even starting from the beginning.
Right. No,
So,
I think that's a really valuable point. To
that's
and
it.
dive in, get yourself going, pick up some rope, and start, going from there. Well, look, I'll
With
let you.
safety.
Yes, with safety. No, 100%. We have to calculate as much risk
Mm,
as we can and go from there. Um,
yeah.
there was a scene that I just, in some sense, I won't go on because I'm going to save it for an episode, but in the larger sense, that took over 6 weeks to build, and its
Mm,
culmination was, yeah, a couple of days ago. And
hmm.
but it's putting that time in, and you've got to start, and then you work and hone that part. I don't like to say perfect, because you're always evolving, and you work on
Hmm.
that part, you get that part right, and then you move to the next part and you keep working on
Yeah.
that part, and then you put those two parts, then you just keep working the line until
Yeah.
as your confidence grows. But it is important to get out there, start doing even if you're starting yourself, understanding how to make knots. I was in the
Yeah.
Navy. That was part of our deal, learning all the different
Hmm.
knots that are out there. So, which is, I always get a lot of feedback and crap about, you were Navy, why the hell don't you want to be a rope tire? Because I'm like, I don't like it. It takes too damn long. I didn't like tying up boats. I'm not going to like tying up people. It's not, give me handcuffs and some duct tape. I'm fine.
Yeah,
So,
no.
you
I
know,
got a lot of time for sadists, even if
yeah.
they have no time for us.
Well, hey, I can get so much more done and so much more pain. But
Yeah.
again, it's as much as I joke and I give the rogue community a lot of grief. I do have a lot of respect. I gained a lot more a couple weeks ago. I've gained a lot more
Mm,
today, and
mm,
so I do. I really appreciate that. So,
mm.
well, look again. I'll let you get through to the rest of your day. Thank you so much, Bedge, for coming on and giving this little bit of a perspective and look into your world from your side.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, everybody, be safe and stay king.